Good morning and welcome. My name is Bruce Hallett, and I serve as the program chair for the Chamber's historic St. Augustine Area Council. I am also the owner of Matanzas Geosciences, an environmental consulting firm located in downtown St. Augustine. Joining me today is Bob Porter, the Vice President of Public Policy for the St. Johns County Chamber of Commerce. You will occasionally hear Bob in the background. He may not be on the screen though. Bob and I will be your host for the second of two live candidate conversations with the candidates that were initially for seat 1 and today for seat 2. On behalf of the St. Johns County Chamber of Commerce and its Politics in St. Johns series in the historic St. Augustine Area Council, I would like to thank everyone who is tuning in from their computer or their mobile device this morning. Please join us with questions using the chat button on the bottom right-hand corner of your Zoom template. The Chamber's second and final virtual City of St. Augustine conversation of 2020 is about to start. Before we get going and begin the discussion, I would like to outline the format of this morning's candidate conversation. The two candidates for City Commission seat number 2 are joining us remotely via Zoom from their individual locations. We will first hear from challenger Professor Barbara Blonder, and then we will hear from Commissioner Leanna Freeman. We will spend about a half an hour with each candidate asking questions that have been submitted previously and those from the live audience. If you're watching live, use that chat button to ask your questions, and Bob will submit those as time permits. Chamber staff are hosting this event from behind the scenes, and the entire broadcast will be uploaded to the Chamber's YouTube site shortly after we finish. And you can go to the Chamber's website to find that link, or go straight to YouTube and search for St. Johns County Chamber. Without further delay, let's introduce the first candidate for City Commission seat 2 this morning, Professor Barbara Blonder. Welcome, Barbara. Would you like to take a few minutes to talk about yourself and talk about your candidacy?
Sure thing. First of all, I just want to thank the Chamber in particular and everyone else who's attending this morning. I know that schedules are very, very tight, so I really appreciate your time, and I'm really happy to be here. A little bit about myself. We moved back to Florida with our very young son to St. Augustine almost 19 years ago now. And we live in North City in a 103-year-old house now, with all the perks that go along with that, but also, you know, all the challenges as well. I never thought of myself as being a politician, but I'm a scientist, and the biggest issues facing the city are really based in science for solutions. And I think that I know that I can apply what I know in being an academic, actually doing research on sea level rise and its impacts, published in that area, that I have the background, the skills, and particularly a 30+ year experience record on science and applying, applying practical solutions to challenges that we all face. And that's really the reason I'm running. As an educator, I'm a good communicator. I'm really good at explaining scientific topics to people who are non-scientists. I do that every day in my job with my students. So I think I bring a wealth of experience at a time when it's most needed to the city.
So that leads us in real nicely to one of the first questions. What should the city's role or responsibility be in sunny day flooding?
All right, so I know I'm dividing 9 questions by 30 minutes and about 3 minutes per question. This one I could go on for a long time. We moved here from Nags Head, North Carolina. I was on the planning board there. It was a quarter century ago that that city implemented plans such as incentives for builders to use permeable pavers. That's been on my website since January. It's been in the city's strategic adaptation plan and now in the comprehensive plan. It's one of a whole lot of different initiatives that we know of, that they are not new ideas, that they are tried and true, and that we should have been implementing a long time ago. We have a very small window of opportunity to go ahead and implement those big ideas, large and small. It's time to do that. I would absolutely begin working with city and academic institutions to respond to grant proposals such as the FEMA grant proposals, where they gave out $1.2 billion in hazard mitigation assistance grants. We've taken part in that. However, National Science Foundation has $50,000 and $1 million grants that we have not taken advantage of. And NOAA has between $200,000 and $500,000 grants. That helps us get there. I would not have supported the Coquina Park, to be honest with you. That's a lot of money, $1 million. And we saw what happened in the flooding in the nor'easter, which was supposedly a 100-year storm. That's not the case anymore. That storm is what we're going to look like. It's a window into the future. It's a little bit of a time travel going out about 8 to 10 years, but that's what it's going to look like here on a regular basis, weekly. And that's not acceptable. We have to be much more innovative, and we have to put flooding front and center as the top priority, because our businesses cannot survive without it. And places like my home, which flooded twice, thank you, Matthew and Irma, caused our residents to need to leave in order to be able to maintain our investments. So we need to deal with this, and we need to deal with it yesterday.
So just a quick follow-up. So there are opportunities for the city. Obviously, the city's going to have some, should have some projects, but then there's also opportunities for the city to work with individual property owners and business owners to communicate. Maybe that's through different meetings. Maybe that's through the approval process of a new construction project. But is the city then going to step up? Could they step up and help the local business owner as well as a property owner, residents, in order to achieve something that's smaller than the city might take on?
Yeah, I mean, I think as an educator, I see some real missed opportunities in engaging with the residents in particular of the city, but we could be a model. Look at what Venice just did. Venice just developed this engineering solution, and they stayed dry during the last flood threat. Mm-hmm. We need to be out there and really reaching to solve this problem. And we need to be able to communicate why it's so important and why the different alternatives, which ones are best tailored to our particular situation. And our citizens, our residents can help us with that prioritization if we can communicate these options better and get their feedback, get their input, really listen to our residents.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next one. Do you have any specific ideas on how the recently vacated monument space in the plaza could be utilized?
Well, as everybody knows, that's an extremely divisive issue. I think there was some healthy communication going on. There was also some very difficult interactions with people. That is still very much on the front burner in terms of heat. It's really still hot. I think that if there's a way to get the different sides of this issue, not now, but when tempers have moderated, to think about a way of interpreting this moment in time in that space, where we've been through a difficult, very difficult challenge in the relocation of that monument. And there's, we have historians at the college, at Flagler College, that can be very helpful on both sides of that. And we really need to be having that conversation when things moderate. And I think that's what we need to do, is have some sort of interpretive structure or art representation, whatever it might be. That has to come from a lot of feedback and input from our citizens.
So a cooling off period, so to speak, and then a gathering of different perspectives to help the solution.
Yeah. Because without that history of what happened there, as this moment, this was June that this all started. And in light of a pandemic, I think, this is a really great opportunity to talk about how we grow and change as a democracy.
Do you have any new public works projects that you would like to see undertaken during a term of yours?
Absolutely. The wastewater treatment plant has a limited lifespan, and that is the city's. That's where all of our sewage goes. And it is at imminent threat of flooding. The flood barriers that have recently been installed are a Band-Aid. They will not solve the problem. We have got to be planning for either relocation of that wastewater treatment plant or significantly upgrading it so that it is resilient to sea level rise, period.
So for viewers that don't know, you're talking about the wastewater treatment plant that is out at the end of Riberia Street. Yes. Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah. Do you see the city going forward with spring festivals in 2021?
Okay, here's my biology background coming in, okay? So unfortunately, we have not gotten past COVID-19. Mask wearing is helping, but large gatherings, as we've seen over and over and over again, are ways that people spread the virus. I would not ever want to be responsible for somebody becoming ill with the virus or a loved one of theirs becoming ill because they passed it on asymptomatically. Until we have a vaccine and it is widely available, which is not really projected in terms of widely available, it'll go to first responders first. It'll go to healthcare workers first. And that's best case scenario, widely available. The schedule looks like it's probably going to be summertime. So given those constraints, I would have to say we are just going to have to give up something else that we dearly, dearly love. I love the Rhythm and Ribs Festival. Oh my goodness, festivals that we have in the spring are fabulous. The live music, I miss it so much. I miss the gathering, but we all do, and we're missing a lot of things right now. But in order to keep our economy going, in order to keep people healthy, I just don't see us being able to roll out the spring festivals this spring. Mm-hmm. We'll have to wait and make them even bigger and better next year.
Okay, good. What is your position on the city's recent action to withdraw the mandatory mask requirement? We talked maybe just a little bit about that already. It seems that that decision now leaves businesses to set their individual requirements and which will subject them to the wrath of the public.
Agreed. And I know because I work downtown, I know the business owners, and when I talked to them, to a person, they said when the city implemented the mask order, they were relieved because then they didn't have to have that negative interaction with their clients and their customers. It is very unfortunate that Governor DeSantis made a decision to block the enforcement of the mandatory mask order. But I can tell you this, it's a cultural thing too. There's an expectation. So if we do a better job of messaging, if we have signs everywhere, if we have positive messages where we say, wearing a mask is cool, or, wearing a mask saves lives, please help us, please join us. At Flagler College, it is universal. It is required there, but it's universal. It's become part of the culture. I see students walking by themselves down Cordova Street with their masks on in 90-degree weather because it's become part of the culture. It's a respect for one another. And if we do a better job of communicating our culture, then I think we don't need to enforce the mandatory mask wearing. And I don't think there were all that many times that the police force did enforce that order. It was more of a message, more of a recommendation, even though it was an order. So I think we can continue that and enhance our culturalization of that.
So I think your students have done a fantastic job of that. As I go downtown and I walk around, they have their mask before they reach campus.
Mhm.
Yeah, the school has done a good job with that.
So that's a model that the city could use.
The next question. What is or should be the city's role in affordable/workforce housing?
That's a big challenge. The city's footprint doesn't have a lot of room for the high density development that might allow us to provide more affordable housing. It is a desperate need. Our workforce definitely needs it. Our teachers, I'm married to a teacher. I know what they make and salary, and they cannot afford even the quote unquote affordable housing that's just north of the Winn-Dixie. It's out of their range. It's over $200,000 to buy one of those. The rent is high. We have to do a better job of working with the county commission, the county staff to plan for and implement affordable housing. There is money at the federal level to help subsidize affordable housing, and it's being done outside the city limits on State Road 207 and so forth. But we really need to go get that, because our people can't afford to live here at the rate our property values are increasing.
Mm-hmm. So I think maybe, as you know, and a lot of our listeners or viewers have seen, the city has recently adopted fees for short-term vacation rentals. What should the city's role be in regulating this industry? Should the fees charged become a revenue neutral source or something that's added to the general fund?
My understanding is that by law, it is a revenue neutral source. And I don't think even if it weren't law, I don't think it would be appropriate for the city to include those fees as part of their revenue. I know I've spoken to my neighbors who are Airbnb owners. I've spoken to, and I know people who live in Davis Shores whose lifestyle is impacted by irresponsible folks who have come and visited your Airbnbs. But I know that there are many, many, many property owners who own Airbnbs, who purchased their properties, renovated their properties, improved them with the understanding of their budgeting for the situation that was at hand when they purchased those properties as investments, as part of a way. If they live on the site and they rent out their garage apartment or whatever is an Airbnb. My sister-in-law does it up in Jacksonville, and that's on her own property. The fee structure is pretty steep for those people who did not budget for the implementation of these fees. My understanding is the city of St. Augustine Beach has a different approach, and maybe we can look to modifying some of our current fee structure by looking at other examples instead of reinventing the wheel, which seems like what we've done.
Mm-hmm. Bob, have you received any questions on your end?
Yeah, good morning, Bruce. We've actually got a couple, and I'm going to paraphrase them a little bit, but changing topics a little bit. As we all know, the parking garage has been reaching capacity on an increasingly frequent basis, which often creates traffic gridlock as visitors are left with no other options for parking within walking distance of downtown businesses. I would like to know what you would propose to do to mitigate the downtown parking deficiency that has been so challenging for residents and local business owners. And this person is referring specifically to the shortage of public parking within walking distance of downtown, not the supplemental parking on the outskirts of town that we have for festivals and events. So basically just dealing with the day-to-day parking issues that the business community and the residents both face.
Okay, so with that, question, that's actually several different questions, but clearly we have a massive parking problem. We have a massive traffic congestion problem. What I think we need to do is address our car dependency with better public transportation. Again, coming from the Outer Banks of North Carolina almost 20 years ago, the ferry system there, the ferry system in Seattle, the ferry system in lots and lots of communities throughout the world, throughout the country, is an idea we have not put into place here. And we could be using our waterways as venues for transporting people downtown and back out to auxiliary parking areas. That's just one idea. The city approved and budgeted for a bike share program. Over a year and a half ago, it was supposed to go into place. Not over a year, just under a year and a half ago. That hasn't gone into place yet. A bike share program is a great way to get people from their cars to downtown safely and back, and gets people out in the air and enjoying, being able to stop along the way. All those wonderful businesses on San Marco, for example, they could be availing themselves of on their way to downtown. I just think we are moving too slowly with some of these ideas, and that we could be implementing these a lot more quickly and take the heat off of our parking garage and our parking challenges.
Since our city is so heavily dependent on the tourist industry, what ideas do you have for attracting other industries in the city? And how would you work with the county as well as the chamber to achieve this?
Well, I want to start with an example. And first of all, it feels to me as a resident and to the vast majority of the residents I speak to, that we have reached the carrying capacity for tourism here. Even the tourists would say that as they wait in line with their children who are so impatient, and you can't blame them, to do Nights of Lights, for example. It's just, we can't continue to build tourism here and sustain it and give people a good reason to come back, a good experience. What we need to do is innovate. And I'll give you an example. There is a Flagler College grad. I did not have the pleasure of teaching him, but his name is Viv Hellwig. He started up an innovative company. It's called Vested Metals International. It has twice received recognition in the Inc. 5000 list, which is the nation's most prestigious ranking for independent businesses. He's a Flagler grad, he's an African-American, and he is employing lots of people. Now that's not in the city. There isn't a lot of room for industry in the city, but that's exactly the point. The city and the county need to be working more closely together. The city is the tourism draw. The city is the draw for residents to become full-time residents, to move here. I've heard people say, I moved here because I love the Nights of Light so much. And so we're doing a lot of things right, but we also need to branch out. Now, people working during a pandemic are working from home in high-tech industries. We can have a lot more of that. What I also would like to see is the Flagler College partner with the city in developing innovation. In fact, the college has an innovation center that is on our strategic plan. It's in the works. And so we could be an incubator for people like Viv Hellwig to go out into the community, see a need, and meet that need. I also think that we have to be targeting the southwestern part of our county, the Hastings area, where there is now a solar farm that FP&L is almost near completion in terms of its building out. We could be doing a lot more of that, incentivizing that, and also pairing that with agriculture, making our supply chain for food more local, which really would help address our food insecurity issues that we have right in this county. So there are many win-win opportunities with innovation. And I think we really need to be grabbing those opportunities, going out there and making every way possible for people to innovate and grow our economy.
Do you have any other questions, Bob?
Yeah, I do have one more. Again, kind of changing up the topics a little bit. Do you support the current tourist development plan that's funded by the bed taxes that are collected by hotels, motels, bed and breakfasts? Considering that nearly 30% of all the bed tax dollars collected are used for sand renourishment. This is kind of going into the who should receive dollars for out of the bed tax for a variety of different things.
I support that tourist development fund. It's a great revenue generator, all right? How the money is spent, how it's allocated, I think we can take a closer look at that, including beach nourishment. Where we're doing beach nourishment in stretches like Ponte Vedra with very little public access, that is helping individual property owners, and I get that. But it is not helping our tourism industry. Where we have public access to beaches is where I think we should be really looking to improve public access, add more public access. And that's where I could see that, that fund being better used. I think that the city probably does not receive its fair share of that revenue generator. But I also think there's things that we could be doing differently in the city itself, aside from this tourist development fund. We eliminated concurrencies with new development some time ago. And so when, as happened in June, 3 new multifamily developments were approved to go from lower density zoning to higher density zoning, the traffic congestion that imposes on us, on our infrastructure, the roads, the water supply, the sewage, wastewater generated, and the stormwater in particular for more paved surfaces puts the burden on the taxpayers. So I think we need to be generating more. If we're going to do some changes in zoning and go from lower to high, I think that the developer needs to be part of that and pony up.
Okay, Bruce, that's all I've got.
Okay, thank you, Bob. We are nearing the end of our half hour with you, Barbara. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
So in closing, do you have any final words that you'd like to share?
Sure. As a scientist, I don't bring any momentum from the past with me. I am an expert. I've got over 30 years of experience in science, and I have new ideas that are not all new. These are things that we can borrow from other communities, tailor to our own, but I bring fresh new ideas, and our biggest challenges really lie in the scientific solutions. So I am hoping that I will earn your vote to give me a chance to help solve our challenges and really prioritize these challenges. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Barbara.
Sure thing. I'll sign off now.
All righty. We're going to take just a few seconds to switch things around. And I think we have Commissioner Freeman.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner.
How are you?
Good. My name is Bruce Hallett. I think you know that I'll be moderating, and Bob Porter will be in the background. He'll be fielding questions through the chat function of the Zoom interface, and he'll ask those questions as we move along.
Okay,
So,
excellent.
this is the second of the candidates for seat 2, Commissioner Freeman, and welcome. Good morning. Would you like to start off with introducing yourself and telling the viewing public a little bit about you?
Sure, I would love to. Thank you for having me. This is a great opportunity. We're doing things so differently this year, so I really appreciate all the effort. I know it's been a learning curve for all of us. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I have been in the St. Augustine area since about age 4. I love the area. Although I've been here for a long time and this has been my home, I have had the opportunity to live in a number of other places, including New York City, Paris, Atlanta, South Carolina, and so on. I believe that I'm uniquely qualified for the position of seat 2 for the City Commission based on my over 20 years of legal training, my experience on the commission, my 6 years of training on the Planning and Zoning Board for the City of St. Augustine. Also, I am unique in the fact that I am a business owner in the City of St. Augustine, and I've owned multiple businesses. Many of you may not know that my husband and I owned Mi Casa Cafe on St. George Street for about 17 years. So my understanding of the business needs of the community versus the residential needs of the community are really unique, and I'd like to think balanced, or at least always striving for balance. I own commercial property. I've owned multiple commercial properties in the city, residential properties. I'm even the owner of a former short-term rental and now a long-term rental. I am the daughter of 2 artists, and we moved around a lot as a child, and as any child of 2 free-spirited people would do, I went to law school as a form probably of rebellion at the time. But after law school, I chose to return to St. Augustine to make this my home to raise my children. My children have been raised here. I still have one at home. My parents are here. My uncles are here. I'm invested in this community for generations, have been for generations. My grandmother lived here. And I am really always concerned in the long-term health and growth of our community. And I think that that's valuable. And I think it's important to have people who are established, but who also have long-term commitments. I served 3 terms on the City Commission. And quite frankly, I really did not plan to run again. I was really, leaning that I would not run again. And then in March, when it was time to make the final decision on whether or not to run, we got into this, we started having to deal with the pandemic crisis that we're currently in. And while I've been on the commission, we've been through a recession, 2 devastating hurricanes, and now a pandemic. And so I started to hear from business owners and residents that, now's not a good time to change. Maybe think about running a second term. And so I really started thinking long and hard about it. And I thought about all the projects that I've worked on. Some of them have been successful and are completed, but we still have some really great things going. And maybe, now is not the time for the change, and experience and leadership is not a bad thing, especially at a time like this. So it's been an honor to be on the commission. I've loved it. And, and I would be honored to be able to serve another term.
Thank you. So as you know, we have a 30-minute time to discuss a set number of questions. And as indicated, Bob will probably chime in every now and again and offer some that he's received through the chat function. So we'll start off with our first question.
Okay.
What is the city's role or responsibility in sunny day flooding?
I think that's a great question, especially what's happened in the last month. And as I said, we've been through 2 devastating hurricanes. My personal home, we were flooded twice, so Matthew and Irma. So nothing is more personal, or it's not any more personal to anyone else than it is to me. It is our role, and I believe that it's the city's role to address sunny day flooding, stormwater improvements, and sea level rise to the absolute best that we can. Personally, I have been very active in these efforts. I personally have consulted with the city of Miami Beach, where they have had some pretty aggressive efforts, and studied their projects, their successes and their failures, met with their resiliency officers. It was after that that we established our first city resiliency officer. So I'm very proud of that. And that was something that I did several years ago. Well, started working on it longer than that, but we had finally had the appointment I think it was 2 years back. I've also been really active in seeking federal funding at the state and federal level. And I think that's important. I think we need representatives who have the ability to close the deal on some of these funding issues. For example, we currently have $28 million in flood mitigation projects in the works. That's a lot of money for a town that has 13,000 citizens. That money came from federal, is mostly federal money. Of course, there's some of it is local. We have huge projects in the works, and we have many more that need to be done. I'll spend a little more time on this question than maybe some of the others because it is so important. Most proud of some of my efforts in this area, which include the acquisition of Coquina Park and Davis Shores, where most of the properties are below 6 feet, or many of the properties. We have some very weak links over there where they have flooding even when there wasn't a storm or a hurricane. And that's what you refer to as sunny day flooding. So with the purchase of Coquina Park, which I originally thought it would just be nice to have a park in the neighborhood, and then after consulting with our engineers and taking the steps to meet with the scientists and the engineers, we discovered that we could really raise this property. I think it was at 3 or 4 feet to reduce the number of days of sunny day flooding. So it was not a permanent fix. It has successfully reduced the days of sunny day flooding. And we have a few other weak links in that area that are going to be our next projects. And actually tonight at 5:30 at Coquina Park, there's a whole meeting on what projects are in the works, what are the next projects, and what are our long-term goals. And of course, money and funding determines a lot of what comes next. You know, if a certain specific project is funded, then we put our efforts there to move forward on that. The other is the acquisition or the protection of Fish Island. I know the whole community came together, and I say this and I'll say it again, all the stars aligned. But something that people may not know is that for over 12 years, I took action to prevent the development of that property. And that started when I was on Planning and Zoning Board, where I recognized the uniqueness and the important role that it plays in flooding and having that area, that natural shoreline, as opposed to concrete. So I'm the one who actually went to Tallahassee, made the bid to Governor DeSantis, and received the final funding from the Florida Forever money. So those are all really big efforts. Lastly, the Bayfront seawall was one of the first resiliency projects that we worked on. And, you know, we raised the level of the seawall there right on Avenida Menendez. We're currently working with the national park so that they can raise their wall. And once that is done, we will be, that area will be in full compliance with our 1999 master plan, which was to raise it. Again, we always have come back to the same problem. When the sea level is higher than the land, we have, you know, there comes a point where we can't fight it. But what we're dealing with these storms and nor'easters, there's a lot that we can do. We're doing a lot, and there's a lot more ahead in the future. And the more that people become aware of what's going on and sharing with us what they're experiencing, the better.
So to go back to your meeting that's going to be in Davis Shores, is that open to the public this evening at 5:30?
Absolutely, and it's outside, so everybody can socially distance and be masked. There will be some displays, which is going to be a little challenging because I think it's important for people to see the actual, see the level of the land and what we're dealing with so they can see the low spots. But staff has been working, and I've been working with them on putting together a really good presentation and asking for feedback, because we have a lot of people who have good ideas and they can work with our scientists and engineers as well. But we have some other big projects coming up. Well, actually in the works there right now. 5:30 Coquina Park tonight for 1 hour.
We'll move on to the next question. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Do you have any specific ideas on how the recently vacated monument space in the plaza could be utilized?
Well, first, let me say that moving the memorial was a decision that my support for moving the memorial was something that I came to after hundreds of hours of meeting with, you know, probably hundreds of people, but really hearing from as many people as possible. It was very hard because people have strong decisions. I am comfortable, and I believe that, you know, in my heart, I made the decision that I believed was in the long-term best interest of the community. Although I didn't have personal negative experience or history with the memorial, I believed that returning it to private property, which is where it originally started, was on private property. It was originally built on private property, the bishop's property, and removing it from city property and taking the burden off of our police force that was really fighting an unsustainable fight to protect it was in the long-term best interest of our community. I also believe that reasonable people can differ on the issue, but I want people to know how much time I invested into it, and that I believe that we can, reasonably disagree on it, on the final outcome. But I hope it's in a place where it can be protected and where it will not be hurtful or offensive to people who are looking for and still fighting for equal justice. And that's something that, I personally have experienced as an attorney, were issues of where I really questioned how equal our justice was for minorities. So with that said, the plaza is public property, so it's a different, I believe that it serves a different role than private property or business owners' business property. So I believe that it'll be the public who decides what ultimately happens in the plaza. And I think for now, it's really time for healing, because it was so divisive, and that just allowing the time for people to come together and realize the issues that we have in common, and then building from there something that has community support.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. You mentioned a few things with through the sunny day flooding question about potential projects. Are there other projects that you may see coming up that you may spearhead under a new term?
Sure. So one of the bigger projects that we have in the works now with that is the Maria Sanchez project, which I think in the end, that project alone will be over $20 million. Excuse me. There are West Augustine expansions of sewer that I personally have been working on probably for 10 years. I was at the initial meeting with the county. It gets complicated there because some of the areas the city owns the utilities, but the county owns, but it's in a county district, so it gets complicated. I've fully supported investing hundreds of thousands of dollars into that project and pursuing the federal funding, which we thought we were going to get this year before the budget changed. So that's a big project. In that same area, we have invested in utility systems that are spec ready in the West Augustine area. And one of our big projects there, which I'm looking forward to building on, is the Volusia and King Street intersection there, which is ready for business now. That was an area where we expanded and improved the utilities so that it could really support businesses. Mm-hmm. So that's been something that I'm looking forward to moving that forward. We also have, one of the big projects I mentioned, there are things in the works that I'd like to see through. Something that I've been working with Mr. Browdy for the corner of King Street and US 1 as to how that property would be developed. And that is going to have a huge impact, not only on public works projects, but mobility issues, transportation issues. That property has a lot of potential. And, being able to work together to talk about the needs of the community, the fears of the community, what's been successful, what hasn't been successful is really important. And those are the kind of relationships that I've been able to build over the 3 terms, so that there's a feeling of working together, but with being mindful of the overall needs of the community, because we do have to balance the residential interests and the business interests.
So that Browdy's project or property was something that had a fair amount of news time years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, maybe. And so that is still something that the city has potential plans for.
Well, although it hasn't been in the news for a few years, I would say that meetings have continued pretty regularly with between the city and the developer. Design efforts, me sharing concerns about what could be there and what I worry the impact could be if it's not modified. There've been modifications. There's some, shortly before the pandemic, we were excited to be able to tell people that we were actually in communications with the possibility of bringing a train stop to that location. which would greatly support businesses. It would support mobility. It would support sustainability. I mean, it would just do so much. And that's something the pandemic has stalled, but I expect that that will be forthcoming, and I plan to remain very active on that project for as long as I can. So hoping to see it back. I think there's a lot of potential there, and we have a very good dedicated property owner at this point. And we don't, you don't always have that when you're looking to protect the rights of everyone. So.
What is your position on the city's recent action to withdraw the mandatory mask requirement?
Well, I'm concerned with it. And before I even, had any idea of what the questions would be today, I actually raised that issue on Monday at the commission meeting. And because I can't talk to my other commissioners, so I had been getting a lot of negative feedback and concerns from business owners, but also employees who were starting to not feel protected, business owners who were afraid to implement the policy because it wasn't supported. So I raised that issue at the commission meeting on Monday. And what I learned was that the feedback was, we were all hearing the same feedback. So, what happened there was the governor took action and it basically invalidated what we did. So now we have to decide what we're going to do moving forward. His action was basically that we're coming out into a safety zone and that we don't need these restrictions, so we're going to open up. So what we do is we're really monitoring the numbers daily to see what happens in the state, but also what happens here, what happens as we get increased tourism. This last weekend was great. It seemed like there were a lot of people in town. And it would be nice to have the support of the state, and it would be nice to have the support of the county. But as you know, sometimes we have to act alone to protect the public and to support the businesses. And so I wouldn't be surprised if it comes back. If some kind of mandate isn't reinstated, quite frankly, depending on, if the numbers start a pattern of dropping the next few weeks, that might be a different story, but it's going to be based on what's happening with the pandemic.
So then is there a role for the city then to make recommendations to
Well, I've been exploring with the city attorney what those options are. We can have an ordinance that just doesn't have fines. We could, there are a couple of different things we could do. We could put the burden on the business owners, which I'm hearing they don't want. But so there are a number of things that we can do, but really what we've been talking about is taking a leadership role so that they're encouraged, and so business owners can just say, look, we have to, this is what the city requires. There are a few business owners who don't want it, frankly, but I would say that the majority of the people I'm hearing from do. And I'm hearing from a lot of workers, like restaurant workers, who felt protected. Okay, it's okay for me to go into work and still visit my grandmother or still live at home or visit my kid on the weekend or have, share custody of my child. And now they're saying, now it's not mandated. So I'm going into work and I'm feeling really exposed and I have to think about what I'm bringing home to my family. So I've heard a lot of that. So we're exploring what can be done if the numbers do not start. They started to go down, and if there isn't a consistent decrease.
So that mask discussion kind of leads into this next question.
Sure.
Do you favor the city moving forward with the spring festivals that we typically have this next year?
Well, I think the spring festivals are hugely important. Obviously, public safety is our number one goal. I think that we're learning how to return to our normal lives with safety measures, whether it be masks or social distancing or limiting numbers. And I think that decision is going to be based on what happens in these. I don't know what the deadline is for making the decision, but I know that people need to plan in advance. So that will be made with those things in mind. But like I said, we're learning how to do things safely. And I'll say this, as a business owner, a former business owner on St. George Street, I realize the importance of having those festivals as an attraction to our area. that brings people not just that weekend, but that's the person who may come for the festival and may come back the next weekend or buy here or think about investing in a business here. So I know how important that is. I also know how important it is to not have them too frequently so they don't pull from the existing businesses on too regular a basis. And I think we have that balance now. But we need to, I think that it's going to depend on the numbers. Culture is hugely important for St. Augustine. I've, for example, been the liaison for St. Augustine Sister Cities. I also brought the Picasso exhibit to St. Augustine from Spain. And I don't know if you people remember that was during the 450th celebration. And believe me, we had some major obstacles dealing with the Picasso Foundation, the family, the museums, transportation, costs, everything that you can imagine. But I was able to navigate through all of those obstacles. And in the end, we hosted a world-class event. And those are the kind of things that, like the festivals, give us a reputation of quality cultural events that attract people to the area, short-term and long-term.
Bob, do you have any questions that you would like to bring forward?
Yes, Bruce. Good morning, Commissioner. This came in on our chat line. I'll just read it verbatim. As we all know, the parking garage has been reaching capacity on an increasingly frequent basis, which often creates traffic gridlock as visitors are left with no other options for parking within walking distance of downtown businesses. I would like to know what you have done to mitigate the downtown parking deficiency that has been so challenging for both residents and local business owners.
Okay, I think that's a good question. We've been struggling with parking issues for a very long time. One of the things that we've done is we've started, it's been a few years now where we've used the shuttling system for large events, or when we know there are going to be a lot of people here, 4th of July, and even for some of these really big festivals. And so, a lot of times people come into the downtown area and they don't need to be there. I mean, they are going to be there the whole day. So having to walk or take a shuttle in is not a huge obstacle for them. Also, we talked about what's going to happen, with that property at US 1 and King Street. I hope, I can't guarantee it, I'm kind of talking about things that are not confirmed or yet, but that is a location that we are eyeing for potential additional parking that the city would use. We are improving, and that's a place where people could bike in or walk or have some kind of shuttling or, some a multi-modular transportation system there, which I fully believe in. We're making improvements for pedestrians. You see them. They haven't come as quickly as we may like them to. For example, a lot of them we're working with DOT in getting bike lanes, and we're also limited by the width of our streets, where we would love to add a nice wide lane, but then we have to do away with a lane of traffic. That hasn't been very popular. So, but we do have those systems in place, and we are actively working on all types of mobility issues always.
What is or should be the city's role in affordable and/or workforce housing?
Well, our strategic plan says that it is one of our goals to partner with outside agencies to support affordable housing. We have suggested over the years some options. Obviously, the city has limited properties, but we are currently working on an active project with the county that could come to a project that would very much impact this area. It's not, I can't really comment further on it, but it is a responsibility that we have. It's important. We can't run our businesses without employees, and employees have to be able to find affordable housing. And it's really tough and limited right now. And A lot of our housing has gone into the short-term rental pool, and that's greatly impacted affordable housing. Not, you know, certainly can't knock somebody for wanting to get the best price for their property, but the reality is that it has impacted us. But I do believe, and it is in our strategic plan, that we work with agencies to promote it.
Since our city is so heavily dependent on the tourism industry, is there room for another industry to be brought in that could diversify what the city offers? And is there an opportunity for the city to work jointly with the county and or the chamber in order to bring a new activity forward in the city?
Well, I think that it's our responsibility to participate in economic development. Some of the things that we've done in the past is expedite permitting, offer support and information on historic preservation, on the community in general. One thing that is interesting is the city and an area in West Augustine are the only areas in the neighborhood that have been designated opportunity zones by the federal government. So there are areas in the city that are where an investor would get very high tax incentives for investing. So that really encourages additional industries to come. One thing that I learned about that I had not fully appreciated until my time on the commission is the value of working waterfronts. And by keeping those waterfronts and keeping them as working waterfronts in the sense that they still do boat repairs, they may still build and manufacture items, that it's not just condos and restaurants, that we have sustainable industries here. And you see that, and I'm just pointing to the more recent ones, for example, with the shipyard, you know, they have warehouses in there, they have extensions of other businesses that are not just tourist related, multi-use. It's a multi-use development, but I think that there's room for more of those type of developments and industries. And so we play a role in supporting those, whether it be with information, pointing them in the right direction. A lot of times people don't even know of the tax incentives that are there, like on historic preservation items or on this opportunity zone that's more recent. So our job is to, you know, when we meet with people, to educate them on that or share ideas. You know, we're constantly studying other projects and other areas and what they've done and how popular these developments, these mixed use developments have become and how successful they've become around the country and other areas where it's, you know, where people live, go to the dentist, have childcare, have a potential industry, manufacturing plant nearby, but where the use is really mixed and provides, you know, economic opportunities for the people who live there.
We are nearing the end of our time, Commissioner. Okay. Do you have any sort of closing statement that you'd like to offer the viewers?
Well, I would just say that I've been very fortunate to be on the commission. I have enjoyed it very much. I feel that having practiced law for 20 years, over 20 years, has really helped me, as well as the 6 years of training on the Planning and Zoning Board. I believe that experience counts, and I would hope that I would be given another opportunity to serve the community, and including the residents and the business interests. But I just feel very thankful, and I have a lot of gratitude for the opportunities that I've had, and there are a lot more opportunities that I hope to be a part of.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You guys have a great day.
On behalf of the Chamber, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us this morning and participating in the 2020 candidate conversation. Have a good morning.
Have a great one.